evening, everyone. Welcome to the Art Platform, TAP as we call it, and to TAP Talks. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's lovely to be here with you all and a very happy new year. And I hope all of you are safe. Some of you may already know, but those of you who don't know, TAP India is a collective platform that brings together galleries from around the country to support, collaborate, and generate more visibility. We explore newer markets and open private doors to conversation through the TAP Talks, like the one we're about to begin. We wanted to create a platform that would be a one-to-one candid platform for talks between people from the industry, talking about their experiences, trends, and hopefully address some questions you may already have about the art world. Let me begin with introducing our speakers for tonight. We have Supraja Rao, who is the founder of Kadari Art Gallery and is an eminent interior designer whose first love has always been art. She founded the gallery with an intriguing vision of otherwise interwoven fields of space design and art, which was a gap that needed to be filled. In 2016, she started sourcing and curating artworks through Kadari. Soon the gallery transformed into a place where art made a statement and infused with the space design propelled Ms. Rao's vision and passion. Our next guest speaker is Princess Pea. She is an anonymous Gurgaon, Delhi-based visual performance artist. Identified by her large anime head, she pops up at various public places and events such as art fairs, asking questions to the society about identity and self-worth. She broke into the art scene in 2009 with her solo at the India Art Fair. Art enthusiasts describe Princess Pea as a living sculpture, as she treads a fine line between the world of fairy tales and the mundane. She is the founder of the company, the Pea Family, that raises awareness of the girl child, women's empowerment, and gender issues through her work. Last but not the least is the interior designer, Iram Sultan, who specializes in creating both modern and traditional designs with a unique twist. Her work focuses on designing spaces that are beautiful, comfortable, and most importantly, functional. Design to her is all about storytelling, curated with a love and told with a passion. Art plays an important role in her spaces, and she is known to effectively amalgamate the best of artworks in all her projects. Art, craft, heritage, design, history, joy, and warmth all play into her creative design sensibility. So this evening, we're going to talk and discuss the entire idea of the confluence between art and design. While discussing the talk with all of our speakers for this evening, I brought in the element of craft as well. And I think we're going to have a very interesting conversation because we're all throwing ideas at each other and they're things that we all believe in and we all obviously are deeply involved in art and love art, but yet there are these peripheral things that come along. So I thought we should throw up all these ideas and discuss them. And this is a lovely group we have this evening. So welcome and thank you, ladies, for being with us this evening. So why don't we talk about all of you and your work? So Iram, tell us about your conviction and your ideas and tell us about your work. And then let's start our deeper conversation.
Thank you for having me, Sharan. And it's wonderful to be here with Supraja, you and Princess. When we were talking earlier, in our earlier conversations, like I said, Princess is someone whose work I've followed for many years and whose work I really admire. Supraja is an old friend. And again, I'm thrilled to be here with you, again, someone I've known for very long. My work is about designing spaces, but I think at the end of it, I can't imagine a space which doesn't have art because I think that's where the soul really comes in. I have, I think, fairly clear views in my head, but I'm very open to seeing where this conversation goes. In my head, art and design are two distinct fields. I think art is deeply personal. It's extremely intimate. It's an artist's personal response to the impetus, whether it's like Princess's response to gender issues or Shilpa Gupta's work about boundaries, or I mean, I could go on and talk about it, but it is actually an intimate personal response where the concept, the heart, the soul, the mind of the artist is the first person or the first response. And then there is the other, which is me or you or Supraja or anybody else who's responding to that artwork. And then our response comes into play, and that's how it works. So I'm just going to share a small presentation of my work where I'm going to share a few spaces where you'll see design and art, and hopefully I'll be able to share my ideas through it. I'm just sharing. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. So this is the first space that I wanted to talk about. It's a living room, it's a living space. It's of course a design space. We created this in a public space. This was actually an exhibit that we wanted to use to create a space for a furniture brand. Now, while we were doing this, it was, of course, a living area which we were trying to emulate. This is, you will see design, you will see objects, you will see space design, you will see objects and art. But the minute you start looking at the space carefully, all that my eye could go to in this image is that Ravinder Reddy head in the extreme corner that we placed, and that lovely Anjarodia work on the right. Because I think that just gave it soul. While everything else is a design object, there are little beautiful Pea Wustenberg glass pieces, there are beautiful iconic furniture pieces, they are all becoming part of the space design. What to my mind is standing apart in this entire space is that gorgeous Atul Dodia shutter work and that Ravinder Reddy head. So while design is extremely important for me to create that form, that space that works, what is giving it soul at the end of the day is the art. And therefore, for me, the two are distinct divisions. They work well together, they exist together, they have to be together, but they're not the same. The taraxacum light which hangs over this dining table is iconic. It is an iconic design piece, but it is an object. It has a function. That lovely artwork on the wall is an artist's personal evocative response to whatever the message is that he's trying to put out there. But it's still holding his own, and look at how it's working together. So for me, while the two ideas of design and art work together, they remain distinct. In this second space, which is yet another space that we worked on, of course, we have the most gorgeous Omar Wasim on the left-hand side. This gorgeous textile work, which again is very much part of the space, but not an object. And I want to once again illustrate through my own work that if you look at the Harminder Judge work, which is hanging on the wall of this space, there are design objects. There is a cult iconic lamp, which is there in the corner. There is a sofa, which is again an iconic design object, but it isn't art. So how are you looking at the confluence of art objects and design objects? In my head, there is always a thin boundary. They coexist very closely together, but with a boundary. In this image, if you look at the screen, on the left is a space where I have actual design objects that we commissioned a young ceramist to work on. He created a wall mural for us. It was a craft-driven mural, but the impetus, the idea, the thought behind it was ours. It was a designer's thought. It was not an artist's thought. Whereas if you look at that lovely Rux Media diptych on the right-hand side, it is an artwork. It is the artist's thought that we sort of responded to, and therefore it came into this space. Like this magnificent Julien Segard work, I literally cannot take my eyes off it at any point. We love it very, very much. It's placed really well in a design space, but is it part of design, or is it art? To my mind, it's very, very clearly art. Again, Scandinavian design pieces pulled together in a space, but come alive with the art, keeping the distinction alive. So there's a lot of conversation about how craft or how design today is evolving into art. These are PhDs, which are extremely important right now. They're seen all over the world. They're collected, they're collector's piece. So they are being collected almost like art, but they are collected as objects. So that's the second aspect where for me design comes in, that these are design pieces, these are design objects. But that Revati Shani artwork on the wall for me is not design. That remains as a distinct piece of art. Again, part of this whole space, the lovely Biraj Doria work, the Sachin George Sebastian black paper work, next to a lovely design object, Rushad Shroff's lamps, the Clayman pieces, the Demuro Das consoles. Design, art, separate. Because what are they saying are completely different things. Shailesh's work in, again, these spaces. Sorry, I don't mean to take up a lot of time. This beautiful work, again, coming back to where art came in, how art leads to design, how art inspires design. For me, design is very, very often inspired by art because I think there's a lot of beauty. But I don't think with art, it's only aesthetic. Whereas with design, whenever I'm designing a space where I'm looking at design, I have to ensure a certain amount of functionality. Design is about function, form follows function, problem solving. It doesn't necessarily reflect me and my personality or my personal choices, but rather the person whose space I'm designing. Whereas any piece of art that you see speaks about the artist. That lovely Anju Dodia work that you see in the image on the back on the left is about what Anju was feeling at that point and what she was trying to express. But the space it sits in, the design, that is about the people I was designing for. So that level of differentiation or distinction in my spaces always remains. I love having design objects as well as art both in my spaces because I think it completes the circle of design for me. But if I said they are the same, I wouldn't say so. But I think the person who would probably have a different version of this would be Supraja, because Supraja wears two hats. Supraja is a gallerist, Supraja is a designer. And I have asked Supraja this question separately also because we're friends for a long time. That Sups, when you're thinking of art or your gallery, how are you picking an artist? What is, is it the message or the thought of the artist behind the artwork? Or is it just the form, material? What is it that drives you?
Thank you for asking me this question, Iram. And firstly, thank you, Sharan, for having me over. Lovely to chat up with all you fantastic women. I know Princess also. Interestingly, met her at the art fair, at her solo show. And yeah, I'm looking forward for this conversation. And yes, the craft bit of it, the conversation on craft, art, and design is, I think, going to be a bit of a surprise element for all the, the guests who've joined in. Yes, I practice interior design as well as I'm a gallerist. I started them interestingly, same 6 months, about a 6 months gap in 1991. But I guess I was a little young or ahead of time. Market wasn't that mature, so I exited the art business in about 3 years then and just focused on design. But the love for art and the exposure to art from young age, literally the age of 9, 10, was always brewing in me. And I would source art from artist studios within the city or largely buy from galleries in Delhi then. And so the love for art was always there. And I got back to it just in a full-fledged way as a gallerist just about a few years ago. And then okay, sorry, this is the wrong slide. Yeah. And now I wear two hats, design and gallery. So back to your question, Iram. When I'm selecting artwork, so when I'm a gallerist, I'm always a designer. But when I'm a designer, I'm not always a gallerist or an art curator. Because maybe it's just the fact that I've practiced design for way longer than I'm a gallerist. Maybe just that. And my love for art, and I think it is sort of a bit of, like for all of us, the influence of our times or what we're going through at a given point. So right now, I'm specializing in abstract, new media, and pop. I love color. Just as a person, I think I'm I can do diametrically opposite things, and I just blame it on the fact that I'm a Piscean and there are two fishes floating the opposite way. So you could sometimes see me do very, very silent white and neutral color works, or something as dramatic and as colorful as this. So I'll show some artwork in my own design projects and a couple of pictures of the gallery and talk a little about it. And so just as we were talking about craft and design, this is in one of our a large bungalow project. As soon as you enter, the client had decided to name the house Ashwa, the tree of life. Hence, this we got Alex to we bought this large tree from Alex. It's actually huge. You can't make out the scale that easily here because there's no context of a human scale. And this place is also gray and monochrome with the steel. I introduced this beautiful artwork on the right side, which is, there's this dash of gold and a bit of color. My love for pop comes across clearly in this. This is another view of the same house where you can see the tree at the far end. And again, like Iram was saying, design is design and art is art. While the space is functional, there's great aesthetics. Like here, the entire staircase and the railing, the way the seating is designed in this area, that's all design. But there is, of course, being a gallerist and art curator, a bit of my work borders on the art, and I'm constantly trying to question the same space and saying, how can I do it a little differently? Then this is another in one of our projects. This is ceramic and terracotta work by Vinod De Rose. Again, inspired. If you really see working with terracotta, these are crafts. But he's, of course, a lot of artists, ceramic, they use mediums as ceramic to express themselves. That's another picture. The designer in me does interesting compositions while we work with art. I love doing commissioned works and seeing how can I make art more personal. And Iram would agree. Actually, I'm guessing Iram has less trouble convincing her clients on art, as you can see, such fabulous artworks in her projects. Like this is an artist who weaves, and I got my client has 6 grandchildren and 2 these little puppies, little doggies. So we got this commissioned work woven. So while in my design thinking, I planned this proportion, planned it in my paneling where there was space for this. So sometimes, I actually all the time like art to bring in joy in my spaces. For a lot of people we work with, they don't buy art for the love of art. So it takes us a great effort to educate an art or simply use artworks which are good, meaningful, but when they look at it, there's just sheer joy. This is another project, an art installation. It's done in it's a wide corridor leading from a living room to a dining room. And so we did something like this, which is quite captivating and also sort of becomes a photo op wall. So here I am posing in one of my visits, and yeah, while the inlay on the floor, all that is design. This is in another project. What I've noticed when I'm and you could agree or disagree, I think I really appreciate artists when they're also referring to the context what they come from. And in this picture, the work on the extreme left is an artist who was born, brought up in Kalahasti, came to Hyderabad to study art. When he went back to Kalahasti to practice art, and his influence is only the kalamkari, the colors, the way kalamkari is done, as well as Kalahasti is a temple town. It's a small place. So his works are all inspired by what he's, grown up seeing, and his storytelling is through those mediums. This is one of our recent work. I actually wanted to use a huge work, something like this behind me, but the client insisted he wanted collage. He was some reason in love with collage, and then we use these watercolors in this project. These are some phone pictures, excuse me, please. In fact, there's still a light pending in this picture. Again, when I'm working on the space and I'm curating the artwork, I also use art to add pattern, add color, add movement. I use all my, what I call art, accessories, all the last part of it, to see how the space, if the space needs something, or something is missing, or something is too much. And to me, sometimes they're also tools to correct a space. When I say correct, it's not like something's gone wrong, but you just feel there is too much of something or less of something. So I find these a beautiful way of working with a space towards the end. Of course, now that I'm a full-time gallerist and a curator, I'm able to put artworks in my design process very clearly in the beginning, than going and just shopping for art, which is, like I was saying, a tough task. Ask any designer how difficult it is to get buy good art for projects. And especially because one thing I've realized is, I'm just going to come back to that in a minute when I start my gallery. What I'm lucky is, because I'm run a gallery, I'm in a good position to take artworks to my site, multiple of them, sometimes hold them if the clients are not sure, give them the option, look, let's hold it, if you like it, you take it. And to me, that works very well. And for any designers who are watching, if you're able to get that kind of a service, it'll save you a lot of effort on convincing the client that it'll look good there. This is, for me, also a confluence of art and design. This is a detail of my new gallery door handle. It's a ceramic, it's a piece of work by Vinod De Rose, and I've taken one of his works and requested him if he could commission this for us. But the designer in me had to kind of really work on how to install this, because a door is a moving part and a ceramic is a delicate material. If it's not done right and installed right, it could just break very easily. So when my designer friends asked me on doing this, I said, hey, I've done this for my own gallery because nobody's there to question me if it breaks. So just watch out if you want to do this for yourself. So this is a picture of my new gallery. That's the handle you can see. And like I said, when I am a gallerist, I'm always a designer. So when I was designing this space, I thoroughly enjoyed. This used to be a little play school. It was in such a mess. If I show you this picture, you wouldn't have thought I could, this could come out so beautifully. I wanted this space to be very silent so that the artwork really gets the prominence and the due. While I'm curating a show or just displaying works otherwise, for me it's very, very important that artworks talk to each other. And again, I think that's a bit of a designer in me, and the curator in me is largely because of the designer and my design practice. That's another picture. It's been shot by Monica Sathe. A big shout out to you. Thank you. I just love the way she's photographed this space. This picture is very special to me. If you can see, two different spaces, and I've changed the flooring for a very specific reason. And I'll show you this other shot. We have this beautiful boulder coming in our gallery, and I think, being from Hyderabad, the Deccan Plateau, I am so lucky that I have this gorgeous boulder inside the gallery, and I have some boulders outside as well. So that's why this area, the designer in me chose a darker floor, because I wanted this place to be, let the rock, stand out. Again, you can see a lot of different mediums of works. And this is a current show which we just wrapped up yesterday. And the experience of the gallery completely changed from the previous show to this one. Again, the designer in me can't help bringing in other elements, and like this is all about foliage and birds. So I actually got some real plants and some birds, for the display in the shelves for this gallery. That's another view. So the space completely changed. And I had bird chirp music playing for the show, and got in some plants also to just add to the ambience. So the designer in me always is trying to make every detail very special and go beyond thinking about art. Yeah, so that's a little about my my work, my practice, my gallery. And yeah, then we'll talk more about how and why I select the kind of artwork. Princess, is she there?
Hi, good evening.
Hi, Princess. I'd love to hear from you. What makes you do what you want, and how did you, use craft in your work, and that too from, for the part of the world I am in, and how do you access it? Would you like to um, tell us a little about that,
Sure.
Princess? I'm just stopping.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me, Sharon. It's great meeting Iram and Supraja here. Such wonderful ladies. Um, so I think by defining what I do, it will help us understand that there is a very fine line between art, design, and craft. I'm a visual artist and I use performance to build my communities. From what began as means of world building from the perspective of Princess Pea, which is my alter ego, I have moved towards more collaborative, time based, and intervention led practice. My practice has evolved into thinking about politics and aesthetics of care, women led narratives of self, and economies of domestic life amongst women and children. And I choose to be anonymous. That we will talk about later. So yes, so Prija, you asked me that how I incorporated craft and design in my work. There are many ways to define craft, art, and design. Honestly, they do overlap and they should be seen as a loop. From what I understand through my practice, I'm interested in how all three coexist and apply all kind of knowledge system for my work. As I studied art, and I call myself artist because I'm committed to bringing my arguments and beliefs through drawing, sculpture, and performance. From a poetic to political, I travel between personal to public and continue to ask relevant questions about myself and society at large. I think an artist will always make one of a kind pieces, and in my practice, I apply design, conceive, and test the final object. I literally know that what is that little line which is going to be in my work, which is about like a little fine in the painting, how precise it will be. And that's where I apply the process of design to my practice to understand what and how I need to use my time, effort, and choose the right source to support my idea. In terms of craft, I use craft to build up my sketch to develop into final forms. I take the help of artisans with particular skills, which are culturally practiced as communities, and work very closely to contemporize the final form, in a way adapting traditional craft to present time. I feel that craft is related to livelihood. Craft is evolved as cultural identity. It goes from generation to generation. Whereas as an artist, you cannot pass it to your generation. It is a narrative you build from your experiences. I guess in my practice, I go further one step to make new communities and focus groups with my performative projects, which are built with empathic approach by keeping women as the central of everything. And I would say I'm an artist who applies the design process and use craft to make my work.
You know, I in my life I worked with art for all of my life, and it's my life. But I'm very partial to craft, and I've seen that suddenly that I'm noticing more of the artists who are bringing craft into their world. So can I share my presentation? That I made a little presentation about some of the artists that use craft in their work. Priya? So there's a very fine line between art and craft. So I thought I'll show you a few examples. So can we go to the next slide? There's Rakib Shaw, who's originally a Kashmiri from Kashmir, but lives in London, is extremely, extremely successful. He has a lot of very interesting ideas. His mind is full of different things, but he uses his technique came from his origin, from the Kashmiri. It was inspired by the Kashmiri papier-mâché craft. And then he used the idea of the embellishment, which is so important in all the Kashmiri embroidery, and brought it into his work. Can we see the next slide? So I'm just going to show you different artists and how they respond to craft. So Johns Matthew uses the artisans who are basically stone sculptors, and like a sculptor who must have made this fabulous Mahishasura Mardini is somebody who's worked with him on this beautiful stone sculpture he's done, which I just saw in a recent show. Can we go to the next slide, please? Then there is Dasan, who is an artist I worked with very closely, and he works with the idea of paper folding, which is originally an origami idea, but transforms it completely. And his concept is about life and about circularity, basically. So he talks about all of this in his work, but using a craft skill that is his language. Can we go to the next slide? Then when you look at the work of Ranjit Raman, he uses all the embroidery skills that we see in our fashion industry, but have come and transformed his work in a completely different way, and with a lot of expression. Can we go to the next slide? And you look at Lakshmi Madhavan, who is an activist and who brings in a lot of strong ideas in her work. So the idea is very important. Here, the craft is not as important, but she uses craft as her medium. So, there is this very fine line. It's getting blurred because here they obviously all these artists collaborate with craftspeople, and they do give craftspeople and artisans due acknowledgement as well. Can we go to the next slide, please? So when you look at someone like Ashish, who has used craft, this for me is the confluence between craft, art, and design. So I think, he's taken the toy craft and made this totem, which is a sculptural piece, and yet it's utilitarian. So I think this is where my idea of confluence comes in, but you all might differ because here it's a design piece and yet it's sculptural. So for me, that idea of sculpture and design, meet again. Can we go to the next slide, please? And here we have Tukral and Tagra, again with the same thing, where they've used their art forms working with artisans, but it's sculptural, it's their language, it's completely their idea, and they've worked with people. So again, this is this line where artists are using this. The next thing that's happening is craftspeople or artisans are also coming out of just producing work and using their own narrative, their minds. And, that line is definitely blurring because these are also craftspeople who've got a lot of recognition and are getting recognition not because of the craft, also because what they're using their craft to say. When you look at it's happening all over the world, and I can see it slowly happening in India, which it was not so 10 years ago, but now the authorship of crafts is also becoming very important, where they're getting as much respect as that of an artist. So there is this little blurring that's happening. So this is a debate that we ladies need to have, I think, today, because yes, it is a meeting point, and yet all these people have their identity, right? I mean, Iram, when we were talking more about the idea of the mind. So you tell me, I mean, yes, I agree with you that it's the mind, but yes, also the craft, the design, everything is just becoming so integrated now. So what would you say?
So for me, the craft is a medium. And art can have multiple mediums. We've got Princess here, who's working across various multiple mediums. Supraja, whose gallery carries art, which is in ceramic, which is in metal, which is in paper, which is canvas, watercolor. I think for me, art is distinctly intimate and artist's personal response. If you talk about craft, the minute a Gond artist moves from telling the same stories in his art and decides to tell his own story or his response, I think that's what sets art apart. Art for me isn't necessarily only pretty pictures. Art is a recording of history. Art is an individual's response and attempt to draw attention, a desire to narrate what is happening, some sort of desire to perhaps change, to influence that tiny little piece of that moment of history. I mean, I think there's been no time, whether it's the Renaissance or the great Dutch masters, where there hasn't been a recording of history and change in art, or you can't see the artist's response to what is happening. The great surrealist movement during World War II, today's artists, whether in India or across the world, and their responses to a situation, I think that's what sets art apart. Craft, till it doesn't cross that boundary, is object. It is not an artwork. It doesn't have the soul of the artist in that piece. I'm a huge, huge fan of craft. I'm a huge fan of design objects. Don't get me wrong. I think they have their own special place in my heart, but I can never say that that is a work of art. I think what sets art apart is that particular little kernel, that seed that doesn't exist for me in a craft object. Till it crosses that boundary, till it becomes intimate, it's the artist's heart and soul. Because when you look at that work, what is it that you're responding to? What is my soul going to respond to? I think it's the art.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I see your point and I agree with you. So it is this confluence is happening where the artists, the craftsmen are moving into the art space. And the artists are not moving into the craft space. They are actually using the craft to tell their story. So that's the meeting point for them. And for designers too. I guess they're using the craft for their design forms and also, using it in an intriguing way.
I mean, you showed Rakib's lovely work, that absolutely stunning piece of work. But it is Rakib, right, who chooses to contextualize it in Kashmir, who chooses to talk about his roots, who chooses to go back to that craft and talk about, but his subject matter is still rooted in what he's saying, right? So these are all choices that he's making for his voice. That voice is what is making art for me, as compared to a beautiful object, which isn't necessarily going to say something significant to me.
I would like to add something here. So I've been working with the craftspeople in Itikopaka since last 8 to 9 years now. And the whole idea came along because I wanted to understand that if an artist wants to make a collectible, which is more affordable, just like any other, craft piece, a small piece, how does an artist help a dying craft? And that was my main aim, to find craftsmen who work with turnwood and understand that how can we have a relationship which is both the side is benefited in a way that they live a life making a livelihood from that craft, and now the craft is dying. So an artist comes along and helps them design that whole process into a system where they can use the same ideas, the same medium, and talk about different ideas. For example, when I started working with them, I realized that all the craftsmen are not just men; they are women who are actually building these little sculpture pieces for me. And talking to them became the conversations became art. It was their narrative, their stories which came along with the infinite forms which I showed. It was about how women feel about their bodies and how are they put down about physically looking. in a certain way. And during those conversation, we came out with these beautiful infinite forms, which actually replicates a woman and her body. So yes, I mean, I feel that a craft is a medium which they use from generation to generation to live and find a livelihood. But an artist coming along, helping them understand that this is not just a craft, it could be used in a very different way to talk about different narratives. And yeah, I mean, it does have a very fine line in between it, because you are showing them a path to take this skill to a different level. So for example, the artisan I work with, he's an award winner, and now he is coming up with his own designs, influenced by what I keep having a conversation about. Okay, look, I made this, would you like to change this portion into something else? And he's also thinking like an artist now, because the way has been shown that this is how it can be used
I think that's
also.
very important actually for artisans, for the craftspeople to get out of you know a routine to something
Yes.
that is where they're allowed to let their mind go, and that's where, like Iram says, that's the tipping point where
But
the meeting takes place.
Yes.
But can
Right?
I say something? I want to add to that. Princess, the point is the impetus, the idea came from you, right? There was a thought.
Yes.
That's where it started. That's where it's led to. So I think it's wonderful that you tip that over. There's somebody who's going to that place. But it's whether you want to call it your politics or your idea or your kernel, whatever you want to call it. Ultimately, where it started was you wanting to change something, you wanting to talk about the gender issues, you looking. So that's what I said. It's art for me because that thought is what made it
Yes.
up.
Yes. I agree, because
Yeah.
the craftsman is just working in a system. He's just
Yeah.
making whatever is making sense over the years. And when you go and start having a conversation and build narratives around their life, that's where an artist takes a different turn. And the journey starts of an artist collaborating with, so I would call it a collaboration. It's a
Yes.
collaboration of very skilled worker who knows how to use that uh, skill, and then make the narrative and becomes different. Then that's why you are an artist and they are craftsmen, and you are on a journey together.
Yeah.
I'd like to come in here.
And
So
of course, I mean, design is always there, because whatever I plan is almost like the design tool. I know what I'm making. So every inch is measured and every inch is decided before. It's not like a serendipity happening that, oh, I'll throw color and it'll be like, something will happen. That's not the kind of practice I believe in. As an artist, I use design as tool to plan how I would use a craft, a skill to make my final product, like, yeah, product or an art piece, whatever you might call it.
Supraja, you were saying something?
We can't hear
yes,
you, Sharon.
yeah.
No, Supraja was saying something. Yeah.
So as a
Can't
designer,
hear anybody.
oh, as a
Can you hear?
design, Princess, did you want to say something? No. Okay, so I was saying, as a designer, I've used craft. In fact, before I tried to do Etikopa, I tried working with, the Tola Bambula, the leather puppetry, which is also from my part of the state, the country. And we've done in one restaurant really large puppets to tell stories of Mahabharata and Ramayana. I've got these very interesting lights done for myself by these crafts. But end of the day, I've tried to only merge craft and design. To me, there's a clear difference between art, design, and craft. Artists use different mediums, and especially in this day and age, I think where new media, mixed media is so sought after, I would say. So a lot of artists are experimenting with different mediums, so whether it's inspired by origami and paper, or it's with textiles, ceramics, and That's the kind of work I love, Iram, is trying to experiment and pushing the boundaries and going beyond working with paper and canvas and just flat surfaces. Yeah, yeah, and as a designer, I definitely use art to enhance my spaces, but there's a clear boundary on what art does to a space. And like Iram says, it's the thought, it's so personal when an artist is telling their story through an art. As a designer, we are telling other stories in our through our
Correct.
work. We are telling their story. In fact, in one way, I always say, if you can't recognize me in the project, then I'm successful. If I've left a strong stamp, then I'm trying to tell my story through a project. Mm,
I
Yeah,
think clearly, the space, the meeting space is the interior, right? Where where the art is independent of the craft, which is independent of design, and yet they all sit beautifully together.
absolutely. Art needs a space, and design
Yes.
creates the right
And
space
and
for the
and
art
you
piece.
ladies and you ladies are doing a great job.
Thank
You
you.
know,
Thank
The
you.
Fazar, so yeah. Surim, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Especially now that I'm a full-time, full-fledged gallerist, I realize very few designers have the knowledge on art, and I'm sure there are designers watching this. How did you inculcate this kind of love and knowledge? Because to convince a client to art, you need to be have the knowledge, right? So can you tell me and all of us?
Oh gosh. So I think I was very fortunate. I was born to parents who were, my entire family is very culturally into. I've been going to see art since I was very young. It was something my parents were deeply interested in: art, theater, cinema, um, music, all of it. And I think that is my good fortune. I've also been very, very interested in it. I think I was 11 when, you remember there used to be these Britannia encyclopedias that we all used to have in
Yeah,
school.
yeah.
And there was a section on Caravaggio and the art of chiaroscuro. And I think I was fascinated. I don't think I could tear my eyes off that particular page, that painting with the horse. That's one of his masterpieces. And that's just something that I've done my entire life. I've read, I have exposed myself to every kind of work possible wherever I am. I'll go to a museum, I'll read, I'll listen. Like anything else, if it's something that you're interested in, this is what you'll do. Right? I mean, look at you. You are starting a gallery. Sharan has been doing this for years. When I first met Sharan, she had this amazing collection of calendar art, which wasn't even common. And I think she was doing this with Priya Paul. I remember so many years ago. But the fact that both Sharan and I still remember it after
yeah.
all these years, it's something that you have to be passionately interested in. It's not a tool.
I think
For me,
also I
it's
also
an
think
inspiration, not a
yes,
tool.
and also I think Iram, when you believe in something,
Yes.
it's easy to convince a person. Because when I started the gallery, everybody thought I was a little bit nutty. They really. And my mother used to look at me and say, "What are all these things coming into the house?" And when I bought a lovely nude Sousa, she said, "But what will the carpenter say?" I was like,
Yeah.
"Mommy, I bought this for myself, not for the carpenter." And so I think you have to believe in what you do. And I think, Supraja, maybe at the moment you're passionate about something, it's easy to convince someone. I think that's Iram's skill. And obviously you are using interior artists in your interiors too, so you obviously can do it as well. I think all of us who are passionate about art can bring it in somehow or the other.
No, my question was very specifically from an interior designer perspective. Of course, I have knowledge of art and interest in art, and I can, because Iram, as a designer, you tell me, most designers, or everybody actually, can very convincingly talk about whether it's the marble, whether it's the light, whether it's the everything, right? And we can with conviction say buy this, spec this, whatever. But when it comes to art, designers can't just say, okay, this is good and this is worth your money. What is the artist trajectory? So do you have anything to say at all to designers? Because that's one of the things I face is designers, most designers not being very sure how to kind of pull off and
Well,
suggest.
it's really not complicated. If you don't know, ask. The joy of having someone like you or Sharan or any good gallerist to work with is that what you don't know, the gallerist will know. So make that effort. Ask the gallerist what the trajectory has been. If you're interested in a work, look at the last 5 years of that artist, see if something appeals to you or if there's a question that arises. Princess, I don't know if you're back, but the very first work that I saw of hers, and I told Sharan, and now I see it again, was this beautiful mirror that literally, Princess, literally spoke to me. And I've never forgotten that. So, of course, I love art. I'm interested in it. I'm passionate. I collect. But I think if you really want to do something, then the easiest fix, because you can't acquire knowledge overnight, it's impossible, is to make that attempt and let somebody else who does have the knowledge guide you. If somebody comes to your gallery, like I was talking to you about your Dhara work, right? I would like to know what happened in the last 5 years. Has there been a change in medium, the scale of the works? Is there a different technique? What does it emanate from? What does it say to her? So for me, because, this is my view on art, I really want to know what it says to the artist. There are some works that I'll just look at and I'm sort of kind of blown away and I know that this is what it is. But if there isn't that knowledge, then guess what? There are you amazing people to ask from.
Thank you, Iram. I'm sure a lot of people will find that answer very interesting. Princess, I think she's logged in from the phone, right? Princess, are you there?
Yes, I don't know. Something happened. I'm back from the phone.
Okay, great,
Princess,
great.
I have
And
a
now we can
question
all
for
hear
you. I have a question for you on choosing anonymity and why so while you're, talking on such an important issue on gender.
I think, living in this world where everything is accessible, as an artist, I've found this interesting to be very discreet or unavailable. And the the idea of anonymity works in itself. And like being anonymous gives an immense space and pleasure. And there's a saying by Carl Jung that mind is a house to many rooms. As realization, I've discovered more rooms that I could go into. So to be anonymous is luxury. It's a state of self-treat, personal space to get into. And it's also gives you, like gives me the power to send message across of equality in society. I think there is no need for me up in front talking about it when I have people or communities to talk about it, whereas so many voices can come together and raise the issue together. It's interesting that when I was in College of Art, and there was a kid who came to see the installation which we had done and asked that why is there so much newspaper all over the we were trying to make an installation using newspaper in the corridor, and there was just newspaper everywhere. And we're like, why do you have so much newspaper everywhere? We have so much at home also. So I just stood by the child and I said, if I give you one toffee, you will be happy, right? But if I give you loads of toffees, you'll be like excited, and it'll mean much more to you. So it's in the same way. I think it's interesting to be behind and talk about issues rather than coming up for and front talking about them. Yeah, that's why being anonymous is pretty cool. You don't have to go to your own exhibition. People
Oh,
can handle it for you.
No,
or you could
and I know, and the
people
thing is, the charm about being anonymous is that you are creating that your artwork is your life. I mean, that entire thing is you're living it. So it's another mindset and it's another idea altogether.
Yes,
Love that.
it's like I'm nobody and who are you?
But I
You
love
know?
that paradox, Princess. I always think of it as a little bit of a paradox that you're there, but you're not
And you're
there.
not
Yes.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
and I
then
really enjoy that
sure.
paradox.
Also with the whole idea of, I realized that I can have proxies.
Yes.
I could just give the headgear to someone else, and when you wear it, or Supraja wear it, or Sharon wear it, who knows who's inside? And but we are talking about creating a movement. So yeah, it's a space within itself, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you don't really have to be physically there. You said it well.
Absolutely. I think we're running out of time. We're at 8:29. And
Gosh.
I don't know if people have questions. Shall we just look at the chat box?
Yes.
I have one question for somebody who wants to know whether you're going to add color to your work, to your sculptures, like your paintings.
Well, yes, definitely. I sort of like the natural wood. It's so beautiful when it's the turn wood is happening. To feel like don't want to touch it, but at some point, I've also felt that I should paint them. It's very difficult to find the right kind of paint to work with wood. So I'm
I
struggling
love
to
that
find.
black
Yeah.
kali. I think that black kali.
That's a pigment.
Yeah.
So you
but
also struggle as an artist to understand what will go well with what, because see, wood is not what I have,
I'll you. This is where the designers can help. I'll tell
yes,
you.
yes. Well, there are some
you.
sculptures I painted, which I would probably show it also. These are nice table sculptures which I painted, but again, like it's a struggle to find the right kind of pigment or paint to
Right.
work with wood, which
Well,
will stay long. Yeah,
we'll
we'll
have
talk about it.
Yeah.
Do we have any more questions, folks? Am I seeing any questions? Priya and Anya, do we have any more? I think not.
Not yet, ma'am.
Yeah, I think not. And that was Vijay's question too. So, ladies, thank you. So clearly, our confluence of art design and craft has come to the interior space, which is the architecture space or the interior space, and we can have it all there. And I'm very happy to hear that point, because I love all of them. And somehow when I club everything in my own home, or whatever I do, I feel like I go to my friends' houses and start moving things around. And they all find it funny. Their staff find it funny. Say, oh, she's arrived to move things around and put things. But it's lovely to have it all together. And I think there's never enough of art. There's never enough of craft. And there's never enough design.
Yeah.
True. Well said.
So that's lovely. And thank you. It was lovely, simply lovely having all three of you on Tap Talks.
Thank you, Sharon, so much.
We'll definitely chat again very soon.
Sure.
And thank you all, and good night to everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you
very much. And lots
Bye.
Lots of love.
Bye. Bye.
Yes,
Thank
bye.
you.
Take
Bye,
care.
Iram. Bye,
Thank
Princess.
you.
Bye, Sharon. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.